the Hamilton Coalition to Stop the War for stepping up and making sure that this event could continue. It's been kind of interesting to me. I've been to a lot of controversial meetings, but I was usually the one in the audience opposing the speaker. This last week, I was in the Richmond City Jail as a guest speaker to two groups of inmates, one of them who are working for their high school equivalency certificate, and the other a member of a group called Belief Program, which is a self-help program for inmates. And in order to do this, you have to be, in order to become a speaker in the city jail, you have to be vetted and approved by the sheriff. So the sheriff of Richmond, Virginia, in the south of the United States, does not consider me to be a controversial speaker, but apparently I'm notorious in Hamilton, Ontario. So I hope that at least would raise a question in somebody's minds that maybe some of the things that have been said about what I'm supposed to be speaking about tonight may in fact not be true. The reason I'm here is because I'm very worried that the United States is going to attack Iran or allow Israel to attack. I think it's a very serious situation, and it's one that has ebbed and flowed over the past number of years. In 2006, there was a U.S. aircraft carrier called the Eisenhower, ironically named after the president who headed the United States when the CIA carried out its first foreign coup to overthrow a democratically elected leader, and that, of course, was Dr. Mohammad Mossadegh of Iran. And the USS Eisenhower was being sent to the Persian Gulf, and there was speculation in Time magazine and The Nation magazine that there was going to be, that might be a preparation for a military attack. And so there was a little demonstration in Norfolk, Virginia. That's the most highly concentration of military bases in the world, where the ship was leaving from. And some friends of mine organized it, and some of the people who came were Iranian Americans from Washington, D.C., associated with the group Campaign Against Sanctions and Military Intervention in Iran, CASMII, and that's how we first met Rostam Versal and some others. And Rostam, who used to be a tour guide in Iran before he moved to this country in the 60s, was very concerned that Americans were getting a very distorted view of Iran as a place that was evil and foreboding and dangerous, and God forbid you should ever wake up one morning and find yourself in Iran and people recognize that you were from the United States. God, that would be the end of it, wouldn't it? And he suggested that some of us just go and visit Iran for ourselves. And it seemed like a good time, and I was just finishing up my midlife crisis, and I thought it would be a nice journey. And we put together I go through it about every 5 years, since my 20s. And we got 5 people together, 2 U.S. Army veterans, a woman who's an environmentalist, and an old friend of mine who's a labor activist. And we went and we toured the country basically as tourists. We contracted with a local tourist agency, and we went on a 1,350-mile van ride through Tehran, Shiraz, Yazd, Isfahan, Qom, and had an amazing number of wonderful experiences. Nothing negative whatsoever. We were just completely overwhelmed with the friendliness of the people who didn't know who we were until we had a chance to, stop and talk. Didn't know why we were there, including a chance encounter with 300 members of the Revolutionary Guard who were on a tour guide through Yazd, and we ran into, and just there we were, face to face, 5 Americans and 300 Revolutionary Guard members. And one of them said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Canada." And then Tom yelled out, "USA!" And they all started waving and giving the peace sign and saying, "Welcome, friends, peace." I mean, this happened. I read about it in the book. There was no animosity whatsoever towards us as Americans from the United States. And we came back, and Rostam Versal and myself and a woman named Samin Rayanian, who's also Iranian American, did a tour of about 15 cities, and I talked about my experiences, just what I saw in Iran, which was so different than was the impression that most Americans have. And Rostam and Samin answer the more political questions. What about the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty? What about the IAEA? What about this, that, and the other? And so I got a chance to listen to them 15 times, and did a lot of my own research and looking into the various questions and listening to the questions that people asked us. Well, didn't President Ahmadinejad call for Israel to be wiped off the face of the map? Didn't he deny the Holocaust? What's the situation of women in Iran? What's the situation of gays and lesbians? And in researching these answers, we realized that the best thing we could do is put it all together in one place, and that's the book. So the trip is the hook. I told my mother I was going to write a book. And she said, what about? I said, about Iran. You know, about how the U.S. claims that Iran is trying to develop a nuclear weapon and is a threat to world peace and wants to destroy Israel. And my mother says, no one's going to read that. I said, what do you mean? She says, you went to Iran. That's what you know. Write about that. So that's what the book is, with all the research. So what my purpose in coming here was to try to talk about some of the media myths which basically come from the U.S. government and its allies in trying to demonize Iran. And I want to run through some of those and then try to explain why I think Iran is being demonized, and then finish up with a little statement that CASMII has just produced to try to help raise the issue of Iran more in the upcoming demonstrations. And for the record, I don't get paid to do this. There were a lot of insults written about me in terms of this talk tonight, about how I take money from the Revolutionary Guards. I'm an apologist for President Ahmadinejad. The worst one was that I was a Harvard professor. I was proudly thrown out of college. That's my academic career, for my activism, or my recklessness as a youth. But I do this because I believe in it, and I hope that's why people do their political work. There's a little statement here, with a couple of things to read from the media. But one of the things I like about the book is it's got 180 footnotes and there's no Wikipedia. Everything is mainstream sources, the World Bank, the United Nations, UNESCO, Los Angeles Times, Reuters. People may disagree with the political conclusions of the book, but I challenge them to find anything wrong with any of the facts that are presented. But here's a fact. In 2008, June 5th, the then chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Jay Rockefeller, made some remarkable comments announcing the finding of a bipartisan report of a multi-year study on misstatements on pre-war intelligence on Iraq. Rockefeller said, quote, in making the case for war, the administration repeatedly presented intelligence as fact when in reality it was unsubstantiated, contradicted, or even non-existent. As a result, the American people were led to believe that the threat from Iraq was much greater than actually existed. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There was no connection with Al-Qaeda. There was no connection with 9/11. And those were the three reasons that the Bush administration put forward to justify what would become the death of more than 4,000 U.S. GIs, 1,000 civilian contractors, and no one knows how many Iraqis because the U.S. military doesn't count the number of people it kills. Today we're being told that Iran is a dangerous country that's developed